Abby Siciliano from Elite SEM is going to walk through some strategies of A/B testing. I should have A/B tested some of my jokes for the last 2 days, but I'm going to hand it over to her. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Thanks, guys. I am so excited to be here. A/B testing is one of my ultimate favorite subjects. So I know that you guys are probably thinking about your actionable insights and things that you want to do when you get back to the office on Monday. So hopefully at the end of this, you'll have at least one really great testing idea that you can implement. So first off, let me get a read of the room. How many of you have tested one thing in email at least in the last month? Okay, how about in the last 2 weeks? And how many of you out of either of those test scenarios have actionable insights that you've already implemented? Okay, a lot fewer. So that is what we're going to talk about today, is how to get actionable insights and test so that you can implement things for success. Overall, 31% of respondents to this survey said that they regularly test, but almost 43% of them actually said they don't know what to test or they don't know how to prioritize testing. So anybody else feel that way? You guys have all of these ideas or ideas coming from executives of things that we should test or things that we should do. We just can't funnel and get to the place where it makes sense. We will hopefully get you through that today. In another survey, test popularity is what it's called. People responded to what types of testing that they were doing. So 50% said that they test CTAs. Anybody out here test CTAs before? Successfully? Good insights? Okay, great. A lot of times it gets easy to get stuck in subject line testing or those really easy testing scenarios, but things like CTA or even here with layout and images, you can get to that bottom line lift that you're looking for. So subject line testing is great, copy testing is great, but what you're really looking for is affecting the revenue or affecting that bottom line, the conversions. So you can see up here on the chart, across the board, more people are doing the easier things, subject line, message, and less people are doing things like mobile layout and images that are more technical. So a way to get above and ahead of your competitors is to try to test some of those things that are downward funnel KPIs. And what I mean by that is if you think about, we send an email, it gets delivered, you open it, somebody clicks on it, somebody converts, somebody orders. Those are the downward KPI funnels, those response metrics at the end. When you're doing testing, think about questions that you want to have answered with those in mind. For example, how do we get people to spend more? How do we get people to order more versus just that open rate or even just that copy to click? That's going to make those big impacts to your bottom line that will ultimately have those insights that you can implement. One more here, why test? Obviously, everybody knows testing, testing, testing. It's a buzzword, optimization, but really, why do we test? Or why do you want to put time into the thought and the preparation? So looking at a couple of surveys and a couple of responses, really these 4 things come out of it. Clear direction for teams. Anybody ever have multiple opinions in a meeting and you go back and forth for 30, 60, 90 minutes, still no decision? That is going to be resolved by testing. And the reason for that is you have data-driven insights that takes out opinion of you, opinion of your neighbor, opinion of your CEO. It takes out everybody's opinion and asks your customers directly or your prospects directly what they want and what they'll respond to. A consistent path for healthy growth in between all of the testing, it's hard to see that. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But with testing, you're constantly asking your subscribers, what do you want? How will you respond? What will make you purchase? What will make you convert? And that is the way to have healthy growth long term. if you test one time and never implement anything, you can't be sure that you're doing the best for your possible customers. And then best-in-class customer experience. Across the board, loyalty is something that we're all driving, I'm sure, right? Loyalty. Everybody wants people to come back. Everyone wants people to purchase monthly, weekly, daily maybe. So if we provide best-in-class customer services and experiences by asking our unique customer base what they want, we will have those insights that we can implement and a better brand overall. So getting into some of the tactical stuff, and don't worry, I have some really great examples after this, so bear with me on these slides just to set the stage here. A/B plus multivariate. How many people only A/B test? Okay, a couple. How many people A/B and do multivariate tests? Okay, maybe 5, 10. So in a situation where you have an A/B and a multivariate test, sometimes the A/B outweighs the multivariate because you want to make sure you have that core actionable insight. And I'll say actionable insight about 100 times before the session's over today. So if you have an A/B test, it's really clear to only change one thing if that thing works. If you have a multivariate test, as you can see in the example here, you have a couple of different renditions of just one item that you're changing. So instead of taking a test here, where this would be multivariate, changing the copy color, and changing the background, you're splitting it into 3 tests. So that way you know if it was really just the copy color, that's an easy change. You're testing that specifically, and you can make that across the board on every email, on the website. If you have multiple variants and you change that and say the green button does better, you won't know exactly what's changed, or you won't know what is working or what's driving that list. Champion versus challenger. Anyone ever hear this term before? So grouping together A/B and multivariate tests is how to test. This would be how to plan your tests. We typically at Elite use a champion versus challenger model where we have an existing experience. That's up at the top. The existing experience is then met by a challenger. So that can be your idea, a team member's idea, really anything that comes to the table that could be a better experience, but you want to get data there. After you challenge that existing experience, you have a new winner. That winner is the new champion, and you have a new challenger. So a really easy concept, right? Biggest takeaway, if you take nothing else away from this session or today, is you want to have predetermined implementation. That means that on April 1st, if you start testing, by June 15th, say, just arbitrary date, you want to have at least one actionable insight that you can implement. That way it eliminates anyone from spinning or testing and testing and testing and never getting anywhere. I can't tell you how many brands I've seen actually test, and never do anything with those tests. They know this works, they know that works, they know this doesn't, but they never do anything about it. So this gives you an idea of a really easy way. Put a calendar invite on your calendar and say, on this day I'm going to look at test results and we're going to make some changes. That way, you're good to go, and you can start the champion versus challenger set again, go through it, and get to that predetermined place. Anyone ever do holdout testing? Yeah? For someone that did holdout testing, what was the answer that you were trying to get to?
So one of the things that we do with our company is we were providing,
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect.
One of the things that we do with purchases is we provide a 10% off next purchase. So every other purchase, they get a discount.
Yep.
We did a holdout test to see if this was actually improving customer loyalty or we were just giving away money. Mm-hmm. With the holdout test, we did somewhat of an A/B test in the sense that we provided some with the next 10 coupon and some not. What we found was our top purchasers were still purchasing anyway,
Right.
whether or not they had the coupon. So it came to it let us see that we were just giving money away rather than improving customer loyalty or moving that purchase from 1 to 2.
You stole my point. That's exactly right. If you are just giving money away, it would be a great idea to test that. You could save not only just a discount, but margin. Say you tested your 10% example versus free shipping. You know, maybe your site doesn't have free shipping all the time, or it's only a promotion that you have once in a while. If you test free shipping versus 10%, you have the ability to potentially save hundreds, thousands of margin dollars by changing that up. If you don't test, you won't know. Holdout testing, true holdout testing, is when you take people away from receiving marketing. So that means that you were receiving marketing, you're opted in, but for a period of time, you're going to have no emails in your inbox, no other outbound marketing in your inbox. This way you can measure incrementality. I've seen a lot of brands do this, and it gives me a little bit of a funny feeling because it's leaving money on the table. So here we want to make sure that if you are going to do a true holdout testing where people stop receiving marketing, there's a few things to consider, and you want to make sure that there's absolutely no other scenario that you could do testing to get to that answer. So incrementality and ROI are really the top reasons that we see people do holdout testing. We know email works, right? I mean, email drives, ROI is great, so why test it? Some brands just want to see exactly what the incrementality is, exactly what the ROI is for budgeting reasons, and that's okay. But just be cautious. Take the smallest group possible if you're doing a holdout test. The only way that you can know for sure that you're not leaving a ton of money on the table is to take the smallest group. Only use new contacts. And the reason for that is a couple reasons. Deliverability. If you're receiving emails, and then you all of a sudden stop receiving emails to then later start receiving emails again, that could cause deliverability issues or really not a great customer experience. So take into account what that customer is going to feel if you do a holdout test. Timing-wise, if your purchase cycle is, say, every 6 months, so in other words, your customers come back every 6 months and purchase on average, you would want to hold those people out for longer than 6 months because that's the timing that you would expect for them to come back and purchase, and you want to see if they purchase more, purchase less compared to the holdout. This creates a really large deficit in your emails, especially from a deliverability perspective as well, but from a revenue perspective. And then consider anything else. Typically, if someone comes to us and they want a holdout group or incrementality ROI measurement, what we do is we use control groups instead. So similar to the opinion in the audience, we take anybody who's receiving the existing, so champion versus challenger type testing, and we measure that against something else. Maybe it's a lower promotion, maybe it's a different promotion. Maybe it's still marketing, but no promotion. So try to think of anything else you can test against to get that ROI and use that first before holdout testing. So if you were checking your emails or texting your friends who are up early, I have a really great summary, and you'll get all of these presentations after the conference, but overall, these are the 4 types. So A/B test. You want to first use this testing approach. Use a 50-50 split. A lot of times we see 10-10-80 splits, some variation of that, but the timing of 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours before the winner is chosen can actually sometimes skew the results. So just be cautious when you do those types of tests that it's a very limited time, and with that limited time, you may have limited customers actually giving information. Don't review the metrics too early, and don't make decisions after one test. So it's really easy to plan repeat tests, plan them out ahead of time, and know that you're going to do something at least 3 times before you make a decision on it. I always say 2 is a coincidence and 3 is a pattern. And then what it's best used for. So determining what works best. Does A work best? Does B work best? Multivariate, same thing. After all of the A/B tests are done, this is where you want to have combinations of things. So if you know white text works better than blue text and a green background works better than a red background, combine those and test against the current champion. Champion versus challenger, as you saw. So that test implementation period, like I said, number one takeaway, make sure you have those dates in your calendars and commit to implementing. Otherwise, you're testing for no reason. And then last and least, in my opinion, holdout. If you want to take holdout group to measure ROI and incrementality, this is a great way to do it, but be careful about time, deliverability, and really ultimately customer experience. How we test and how we plan our tests is pretty simple. 4 main steps. We determine the goal and the success metric. So when someone's testing, it's really easy to want everything to be a lift or everything to be a success. But in reality, that doesn't always happen, and that's okay. If you are testing for clicks or click rate, that's your success metric. Once you determine that, you can look at all the other KPIs, but when you go back, you want to look and see, did the thing that I thought would happen? Did we drive more clicks, or did we drive a higher click rate? Prioritize your tests, hypothesize. Very easy to skip this step, but write it down. Sometimes going back, or say you're on vacation, or you want to share these results later with a bigger, broader team. If you write down that hypothesis, it really centers everyone and makes that goal easy to understand. And then execute. I'm sure we all know, we've all executed tests here, right? Execute and document. The best thing that you can do is plan out either a month or a quarter in advance. That way you don't have to constantly be thinking about testing, and while you're executing, you'll have a really easy plan to follow. How many of you use statistical significance calculators to measure your test results? Okay, a couple. I have a love-hate relationship with success metrics and measurement like statistical significance. So it sounds complicated, but it's actually really simple. It's a measurement to show whether the test results are by chance or if they're real. So in other words, if we did this test again and again and again and again, what's the likelihood that we'll get the exact same result? Email is really hard to test with the statistical significance way. And the reason is the sample size is so big and the response is so little in the grand scheme of things. So if you have a list of 100,000 people and only maybe 10% open or 20% open, that is a big gap, and it doesn't work very well with the statistical significance model. What you can do, though, is you can use more of a scale. So if you see here on the bottom, if you have a p-value calculator, which you can easily find online, just search statistical significance calculator. They're free, easy to use, 4 little boxes that you fill in. The scale here will help you. If it's not on the scale of significant or not significant, there could be something that's suggestive, more suggestive, less suggestive, and that'll give you a good idea of, do we keep testing it? Do we not test it? Or maybe we can skip through if it's a really big revenue driving initiative and just implement something right away. I don't always recommend that, but there's definitely cases, I'm sure you guys are thinking of some right now, of ones you just wanted to test once and then implement because it was so good. And then the cycle of testing. So overall, it's really a challenge to you guys to figure out how you can continually test or continually optimize in a way that works for you, doesn't take another full-time person or full-time job for you, and then have those insights. So what we recommend is having that test, interpreting the results right after the test is completed. Determine what day and what time you're going to look at those test results. Remember, not too early on an A/B test, but a couple of days, 3, 4, 5, and then document those insights at that time. We use a spreadsheet that has all the information about tests from scheduling to time of day and all throughout tracking, and then we have a column for results. We put in the A results, the B results, the findings, all in one row. That way, anybody in the organization, anybody on your team, new team members who are learning and trying to get up to speed, can go back, look at those tests and see which one won and which one didn't. This will also help when you have your date of implementation. So when you go and you put your predetermined June 15th implementation day in there, all you have to do, open up that spreadsheet, maybe spend 15, 20 minutes looking through and say, what should we implement next? Prioritize new test ideas right after you document and implement. That way, you're not losing that testing speed or that testing steam. And then right back around again to test. Okay, who is ready for some examples? Yay! Okay, I will put through this slide here. Does anyone know sign language? Anyone know the alphabet and sign language? Okay, so I would like some audience participation here, since I'm talking solo for like 40 minutes here. If you think, when we show the example that A won, I'd like you to hold up the sign language letter A. And that's making a fist with your thumb on the outside, shown here. If you think B won, I'd like you to hold up the B sign, which is 4 fingers out, thumb kind of crooked in. So can we all try? Break it down Barney style here. Okay, everybody try A. Yay, almost everybody did, great. Everybody try B. Okay, perfect. So here's the first test. In this test, we were testing for clicks. So I ask you guys, which one drove the most clicks? We have the colorful background, longer, with a colorful CTA and an image at the bottom, versus a more letter type format with the image at the top and a blue call to action. Everybody hold up which one you think won. Okay, I see a lot of B. I think B is the majority here. Let's find out. It was actually A. So A won, and we have a lot of theories about what works and what doesn't. The only way is ask by testing. This drove a tremendous 33% lift in clicks and 48% lift in revenue, which is huge. It's a simple test, it's a simple change, but now we know that if we have a letter type format, that we're going to do a background with some color, probably have an eye-popping CTA, and then draw the eye down to that image. Okay, next one. This is a 50% off sale for end of season. This is a multivariate test, so there's a couple of different things going on here as a combination based on what worked in previous A/B tests. So version A has everything centered and then a blue shop now call to action. And in B, everything is left aligned and has a white call to action. So show of hands, which one do you think won? I see a lot of A's. So trick question, neither. Both of them worked. Both of them did exactly the same. They did not have any significant lift in clicks. However, there was a 5% lift in revenue on the left aligned one. Well, that's not always what you're going for. Check out all your KPIs and have any insights on what did well and what didn't. This might have just been, the treatment, the specific treatment and the specific background, but that's why you test it a couple times. See if it works. If it does, who knows? People could just be, gravitating towards that left align. We all read from, the top left corner. So make sure when you are testing or when you are designing emails, just a little tidbit, put the most important message at the top left corner because that's where everyone's going to start. When they only give about 2 seconds or 3 seconds of their time, you want them to see the most important thing first. Okay, it's a great brand, Soylent. They're a nutritional drink that we work with. And we have these are A/B tests, 2 different versions. The first version, A, has a green background, and the B has a black background on the call to action. So which one do you think worked the best, A or B? I think almost all A, except for one little pocket over here and one little pocket over there. Another trick, neither, I know. Don't worry, that was the last one of the tricks. Neither. they both did well, and they both had the same amount of clicks, but this is the weirdest thing. 6% lift in conversion and revenue on version B with the black CTA. So pretty interesting there, and funny enough, we tested this 5, 6, 7 times just because we were baffled. Why is that happening? That makes no sense, right? How are we getting a lift in conversion and a lift in revenue? But it's happening. So another reason why you want to eliminate opinion. If it was my opinion, I would say, nah, don't bother testing that. Doesn't make sense. Nobody's going to respond differently to one color, but we asked and they delivered. One of my favorite brands, and I think they're here today, Comrade Socks. Check them out. If you do buy some Comrade Socks, make sure you click through an email so we get that attribution. But this one was which drove the most clicks as well. And if you can see it, the CTA, those orange CTAs there have different words in them, different copy. So in version A, it's a generic get yours, and all the CTAs in the email were generic. In version B, it's a more specific CTA. So it says the actual name of the product. This example says shop parachutes. Which one do you think did better, A or B? Well, I think this is a good mix. Very good mix. B. B did better. It had the actual names of the products all the way down, and it drove a tremendous, tremendous lift in clicks. So 60% lift. Imagine that on your latest email metrics. If you had 60% more just from a simple copy change, one that you could make in less than 30 seconds, that's crazy. And then 43% lift in conversion. So not only did we get more engagement, but we got more response, which is great to see. So people were really into having those names of the products. Perhaps they noticed that there were some different products or new products they haven't seen, and that drove them to the site and ultimately to convert. This one is also which drove the most clicks. So on this one, the difference, it's a little hard to see at first because it's a very similar treatment. But we have 25% off and $10 off. 25% off was 40 or more, and $10 off was 40 or more. So it's the exact same discount, exact same result, exact same margin that you're spending. But from a customer perspective, which one do you think they clicked on more? Pretty good mix. I'd say more we're leaning towards A, and you're right. A drove a 22% lift in clicks. So even though it was the exact same promotion, we had a different spin on it. Not only was it feeling more expensive or feeling like a deeper discount because it was a higher number, but it was something that the brand didn't really use that often. So they always used the $10 off when they had this particular promotion. Think outside the box. Think, what are other ways that we could say promotions? Is it a mystery deal? Is it like this, where you have a percentage off instead of $1? That will keep your emails fresh, and you can always test into them to see what works, but freshness and newness is definitely going to drive. If you do have a test like this where you have freshness and newness, make sure you drive a test, a couple months down the line too. Once you introduce something new, it's not going to have the same appeal anymore, and you may want to introduce something different, but make sure you continuously test. This one will probably test in another maybe 6 months or so if they do it 3 or 4 times, just to make sure it's still working or to see if there's another winner. Moving away from clicks, let's talk about cadence. Has anyone done any cadence testing? A little bit? Okay. Cadence testing is a beast to put together, and it's always a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of jiggling stuff around, especially if you're a brand who is looking at inventory last minute or you're making last minute changes. So this isn't for everyone, but it can be done very thoughtfully. What we did was we took a brand and we had their regular calendar, which is 10 emails per month. We took that down by 1 email per week to end up with 6 emails per month. So we tested a high cadence, which was the control or the existing, versus a low cadence, which was the new. In this scenario, which one do you think drove more orders? So that's the response side. Of the emails, people got either 10 or 6 within the month, and how many orders were tracked? So is it A, high cadence, more is more, or B, low cadence, less is more? Okay, almost everybody says B. And you're right, 46%, just let that sit in. You know, we're not talking about clicks, we're not talking about opens, we're talking about actual orders or conversions here, 46%. So if you get 10 orders on an email, that's another 4 or 5 orders that you're talking about. That's huge. Just by taking those emails down and really focusing on what made sense for the customer, and then also what the biggest hitting were for the month. So if you're going to do this test and you want to say do it for a week or 2 weeks, make sure you take a look at your hardest hitting or your best offers. Try not to duplicate a lot of content or effort since they're only seeing a couple of emails or less emails, but it could really work for you. Also, save you time and effort, and then really get that point across and prioritize those messages. This is a brand Native. They are a cosmetic brand. They do holistic deodorant. And when they came to us, they had a letter format for their welcome email. It was welcoming the customer, telling them a little bit about their mission, their brand, since they're very naturalistic and holistic. They wanted to make sure everybody knew where they come from, why the authenticity is there. And it's really a story about the founder. A couple of bullets here, signed by the founder. And we came in and said, have you tested this? Is this something that we might be able to improve on or do differently? And we wanted to test it fully designed out. So you see the fully designed out version is B, and their existing was A. This was the first ever communication that a customer received. And I actually get this question a lot. Should we do letter format to make it feel personal? Should we do designed out to give them options to look at? And what works best? And honestly, I've seen it work both ways for different brands. You really have to ask yourself, what does the brand want, or what does the brand want to say in their welcome email? But for this case, which one do you think worked the best, the letter format or the designed out format? Lots of B's. Yep, designed out format. Why do you think that is? Anyone? People don't read? Yep, so great point. If you measure read time on your emails, you'll see that it's an unbelievably short time, 2 to 5 seconds on average. Some people less, some people more, which hurts my heart, you know, how much time we spend on one email, right? People are only looking at it for 2 seconds. But yes, so this one was eye-catching, people don't read. And it also gave them an idea of what there was to offer. So Native has women's and men's scents specifically for each gender. And the letter didn't really tell anything about the product. It did tell the story in the background, but maybe it was just a little too early. When someone comes to your site and they sign up for email, they want to know right away what you have, what they could buy, what the offer is. They probably don't want to read a letter about how the brand was founded. They may have already seen that on your site. Or it may just not be the time because it's not going to drive that conversion that they're looking to make. On this example, we have the same hero. And then the next section is products in A, and they're variations of the same SKU. So it's the same shirt, it's just a little bit of a different treatment and color. And then in version B, we skip that entirely, and we just focus on the hero. The idea was to challenge the distraction of having multiple products here. So in this, which do you think drove the most revenue? So overall sales, A or B? Mostly A. You're right. Different versions of the product, even though they seem really similar, at least they look very similar to me, they still drove a ton of revenue increase. People seeing slight variations might see the shirt that they had already or that they bought last week in the hero and not realize that there's other colors or other variations, even though they love the shirt. This way we have additional symptoms of the impulse buy and additional drive towards the site to look at what else is there. So not only did they end up buying, but we got a lot more traffic to the site because they realized that there was more than just this shirt in that style. On this one, this is Ritual. They are a multivitamin company, and they do a lot of content-heavy emails. So instead of just promotional selling, they try to educate about different things that are in their brand or different vitamins that you may need, different research going on. So this is a content email, which a lot of people do struggle with content, right? Promotion is really easy to put together, but content, how do we get people to read it and how do we get people to engage? The existing was a calcium article trimmed down and then a read it all call to action. And in the Challenger, we had a very, very short one-line copy piece and a little bit of a mystery in the call to action. Mystery is one of my favorite things right now. It's everywhere, right? So if you have a Facebook post that says, see the top 10 destinations for January vacations. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I have to click on that every single time just to see what they are. So between A and B, which one do you think drove the most clicks to the site to read the rest of the article? Yep, everybody is right. B. Look at that number. That is not a typo. 303% lift in clicks. Unbelievable. People do not read over there in the corner. Very, very correct. So overall, this works, and the brand since has taken an approach to really cut down their copy. This is a series, so you can see in version A there's 2 touches, and in version B there's 3 touches. This is a jewelry brand called Brian Anthony's, and what they were trying to test is their abandoned cart. So the idea was we'll have a solid 2-touch abandoned cart, and then at some point later we might add something, we might not add something. We were able to test that out to see exactly how much it drove. And we also wanted to look at the other side and say, did we get any unsubscribes? Are people complaining that they're getting too many emails? Are people seeing emails back to back to back? Adding an additional email can sometimes be a little bit scary, and more is not always more. But in this example, B, across the board, the entire series drove a 41% increase in revenue after 30 days. So if you think about that, your abandoned cart is probably one of your highest revenue drivers across your email program. 41%, so almost half of that added on top is huge just from one email. And you can see we followed the exact same format, the email in the middle. We did just a simple hero update, and all of the other content is the same except that bottom area. We had some new images in there, really simple, put it into play, and thousands of dollars rolling in. So I'll turn it over to you guys. I would love to hear, and if you don't want to speak up now, I have my email on here, or you can find me in the app. I'd love to hear about your testing woes, your testing successes. I feel like we all learn from each other. If you have any really great testing examples that you want to share, or insights that you really couldn't derive from tests, I'd love to hear that too. But if anyone wants to ask any questions, we have about 7 or 8 minutes. I think they're walking around with mics too, if you raise your hand.
Hi, over here. Are there any, you've shown a bunch of great examples, and I'm sure a lot of different companies in this room even have tested many variations of similar things. Mm-hmm. Are there any, and it feels like some of these examples are like focusing on the last like 1% of that have a big difference. Are there any design guidelines that kind of get you 80 or 90% of the way there as far as like things that consistently test better than other approaches?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have not seen anything 100% test, and have the same results. But some things that we're seeing are less is more approach. So for example, the copy, right? To the people don't read point. Give it a 2-second, 3-second test, right? So turn away from the email, look at the email for 2 seconds, and turn away again. What were your eyes drawn to? What was the best thing in that email, and was that the first thing you saw? That is always something that works consistently. And then mystery, like I mentioned before, is something that also has been working very consistently recently. And again, I think it's a lot of the Facebook type things where, read top 10 this, or you won't believe what this person said or this person did. So that is really working in the mainstream now. So I think those 2 ideas, you'd have some winners if you put those into play.
You had mentioned about buyer cycle lifetime. With Shopify, do you have an easy, quick way to figure that out?
So it does take some analysis. What you want to do is take your whole list, anyone who purchased twice, look at the difference, get the average there, and then also take your list and look at first purchase versus the date that you received their email address. So if you take those two things, you should have a pretty good idea of how often people are buying. The first purchase would be how long it takes them after signing up to purchase, and then that first between the second purchase, that average will give you a little bit of an idea of buyer cycle time.
Do you ever do, when you have a split test, do you ever do, let's say 30% of a segment goes into testing for, I don't know, 24 hours, and then the rest of the segment gets the winning combination? Or do you always do 50-50 split and then sort of get your challenger versus the new one and then go on from there?
Subject line testing is the only one that I really recommend doing, like a 30% or a 10-10-80 split. For these that are more purchase-based, people aren't always ready to buy right away. So if you do take a sampling after 2 hours, 4 hours, I don't know what yours is set at, you may not see the right results and you may make changes that don't make sense. You have a very small sample group that is on their phone all the time, opening at the time that they get their email, and that's really who you're testing if you send something out and make a decision within a couple hours. It's not a true representation of your total database. Anyone else? Ask me a hard one. Like a really, really, really good, juicy one. Those are great questions so far. Does anyone have a successful test story they want to share instead? Did anybody find anything that they're going to test in the next month in these? Awesome. Great. Well, we'll wrap up and you guys can break early. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'll be around all day.